Hey guys, I'm Leanna. I am a senior editor over at Game Informer, and welcome to my channel. So we're in the thick of E3 hype. E3 starting early. We've got Summer Game Fest, which is leading into E3. Sony's doing its own thing in July. Like, we've got so much stuff going on. This is for anybody that is watching my channel that is maybe not a journalist or a writer or a community manager or whatever in the industry, and you're a gamer that is just enjoying the ride. This is the busiest time of the year for people that work in the industry, stressfully so much. I have not slept since Saturday, and all I've had for subsistence, and it is 6:30 p.m. my time, is a giant cup of coffee. This is E3, folks. It's also why we talk about crunch on the developer side from the media, and people always ask, like, who do you think you are to think you're qualified? It's like, because media also has a major crunch time, but we're not ready to talk about that apparently as an industry. So we're just going to move on to the purpose of this video. So we had Dying Light 2 gameplay shown a couple weeks ago now, if my perception of time is accurate, which it very well could not be. I have, again, not eaten or slept. But assuming that it is, we had some cool gameplay. We had an in-depth look. The developers have been talking much more openly about it, especially after that massive report from The Gamer came out about the studio culture and mismanagement, some weird hiring practices that came under question, also just inappropriate jokes making for an uncomfortable work culture. But that is also not what this video is about. This video is about a comment I made on the Game Informer podcast I got a lot of questions about. And the comment was that Dying Light 2 has the potential to be an industry changer, much like how Half-Life was. So for anybody that is maybe a younger gamer or just wasn't interested in this at the time, I was also working in the industry when Half-Life came out, and that was a big deal. Half-Life revolutionized gaming as we know it in a very big way. The creator of BioShock said there basically would not be BioShock without Half-Life. It completely altered how developers approached combat. It altered how developers approached level design. Like, Half-Life was so impactful beyond just being an enjoyable experience. Half-Life was literally a game industry changer, and I feel like Dying Light could potentially be the same thing. Now, before we go forward, this is not me overhyping the game. I've had some closed doors previews of the game in the past. We're working with the developers for coverage purposes, which IGN, GameSpot, all of them are also doing the same thing. So this is just my personal opinion. This is not me trying to unintentionally market the game. This is me just talking about something that is really interesting. So why do I think this has the potential to be a game changer in the industry, and why would I compare it to Half-Life? The studio at Techland is doing something really amazing with Dying Light 2. When they first did that major reveal at E3 and they really kind of showed off the consequence system, they're taking what players loved from the first game and they're basically saying, no, those numbers are too low. We gotta ramp up that excitement. And they did that. So they have a much more human element that goes into Dying Light 2. Games doing a consequence system or a morality system is absolutely nothing new. You guys already know I'm a huge BioWare fan. Obviously, very familiar with morality systems. RPGs are no stranger to this as well. But what makes what Dying Light is doing so unique is the massive scale. So being able to design a game, no matter how big or small, is already going to be super challenging. But what they're doing is taking that to a completely different level, literally. If they pull off what they have been sharing with people, if they pull off what they have work thing, guys. You know what? One of these days I will do a video that doesn't have me stop mid-video to respond to work. I've been off for a couple of hours, but yeah, them's the breaks. So anyways, what they're doing is their, level design is already incredibly intricate. When you start throwing in consequence systems, morality systems, and things like that, you're really digging deep into the complexities of character design, your facial animations, level design. How does the environment interact with the player depending on certain decisions? And this game is obviously going to have a lot of decisions that can impact the world as you know it. Now, the E3 demo back in, I believe it was 2018, maybe 2019, but I want to say it was 2018. If I'm wrong, no, I haven't slept since this weekend, so we're just going to go ahead and blame that. But what they showed off, and then what we've seen recently over on the Game Informer side, is that some of the decisions you make can have pretty big consequences, and then there are some decisions that have big consequences. In that first demo where they really kind of dug deep into the consequence system and showed players what they could expect, there was a faction chosen that absolutely changed the entire world scope. We saw this thriving city, as thriving as you can in a post-apocalyptic environment, but you saw this thriving city suddenly just turn decrepit, flooded, and just destroyed. And that was because of a decision of who the player sided with. And having that massive scale of change at a drop of a hat and then proceeding the rest of the game through that format is massive in a way that I think not a lot of people are giving it credit to. I think that it's very tricky, and it could kind of fall into the trap that Mass Effect Andromeda fell into. Mass Effect Andromeda, they had a lot of a newer, more green developers working on that. They were working with an engine that is notoriously difficult to work with, is mainly an engine targeting environmentals, not so much the best for facial changes, which is where you get the "my face is tired." And you have to, if you're gonna do that, it's ambitious, and it can be done, but it's very ambitious, and you have to make sure you have the right team. You have to make sure you have the right management styles. There's a lot of things that you need to factor in as upper leadership at a gaming studio, especially a gaming studio like Techland. However, everything I've seen so far of it looks like they can pull off the vision they have. Now, of course, we've seen things like Cyberpunk, where what was shown prior to launch versus what actually launched are two very different things. So kind of jaded by that, because we as media were very much lied to during that process. Restrictions were incredibly restrictive, like more so. I think that I've never seen an embargo as strict as that. And what they were showing to the public was not actually representative of the gameplay. They've since admitted to that. There's a lot of talk with investors wanting main leadership, top level executives step down, but I digress. When you have this kind of leadership styles for a game like this, you need to be very in tune to your team. You need to have realistic timelines. You need to have projected every kind of type of issue that can arise, and make sure that you have the resources to effectively deal with it. You need to be very close with your Q&A team. You need to be listening to that feedback. You need to be really proactive when it comes to any kind of difficulties, especially with a game like this, because it is so intricate and intense that the smallest misstep could completely make that creative vision just like crumble down into the dust. But I think that if they do what they're starting, you know, what they've said they were going to do, if they do what they've shown, I feel like this is really going to do what Half-Life did to the industry. Is it's going to challenge developers. It's going to challenge studios to really look at how they perceive game design and look at the mechanical aspect of tech-heavy design. You know, we're moving into this very impressive technology age where just everything is super intertwined, super interactive. We've got Unreal Engine 5 coming out, which uses movie-like assets, more realistic lighting. I mean, it's insane where technology is. Like, I don't know if it's just me becoming that old person we all made fun of when we were kids of like technology back in my day, but like I'm only 34, but I just feel blown away by the leaps and bounds, especially the gaming industry. We are so different. We are in such a different place than we were even just 5 years ago. And I have a really hard time not just being completely blown away by that, seeing these indie studios utilize those assets. Epic Games has a really great program for indie developers and smaller studios to use, you know, features and tools like Unreal Assets for free, for really affordable prices. There's a solid marker on when you have to pay back. Like they're doing so many things to help developers have the best tools in their arsenal that they could possibly have. It's really honestly impressive. And I feel like with the way that Dying Light 2 is going, it's going to completely flip everything we know on its head, because they are taking mechanics and games of choice-driven changes, and they're taking it where it's never gone before. You know, we've seen consequences have impacts on environments in games before. That's not new. What's new is the scale of it and the potential going forward with those games. If there's any DLC and having those consequences carry over to that, that's incredibly impressive. Seeing comparing the different playthroughs of if you chose this faction over this faction and the world looked this way, or now the world looks this way, looks like it introduces new enemy types, which is nuts. So one of the choices, if you make it actually like submerses the entire city underwater, then it drains, and then you see these like weird fin-like creatures. Assuming I'm not misremembering that, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember being really blown away by that. And then then you're interacting with different elements of the gameplay that other players that chose the other option won't ever experience, presumably. Maybe comes into factor later, but there's nothing that the studio said that indicated that. I do know they've changed hands a lot, not in terms of studios taking point on development, but they've brought in a lot of new people from outside studios. A lot of people have departed from the studio over some of the reports that we're talking about, the culture that we mentioned a little bit earlier in the video. I mean me. So it's very possible that the creative vision has changed, but in the last gameplay video that we saw during the showcase last month, it doesn't look like that core vision is altered at all. If anything, it looks even more impressive. It looks very highly intuitive, and I think anybody that's interested in game design should really be paying attention to Dying Light 2 and what it does and how the community reacts to it, how stable it is upon launch, what do the patches look like post-launch. Is there a lot of reactive fixing that needs to happen, or is it stable and just needing minor tweaks? Because game at this point in the technology, post-launch game updates, we're just going to have to accept that's just going to be the fact of life. And I'm okay with that. Like, things change. You've got different factors of internet speed. You've got different factors of downloading locations. Like, there's so many, shit's getting complicated. But that's what I meant, basically, to answer the question. That is what I meant by how Dying Light could really impact the industry, much like Half-Life did, is it's doing things that have never been done. It's taking things that have been done for a while and taking them to new heights. They're talking full-scale augmentation based off of player choice. That's a lot of power that players have. Half-Life did an amazing job at impacting how we look at level design, how we look at how the player interacts with the environment around them, how it impacted how we design shooters and gun mechanics and combat. There were so many elements wrapped into the creative vision of Half-Life that spread out to so many different genres. There are so many games we have today that we would not have without Half-Life. Dying Light can do this, especially for the horror genre. We're seeing a major comeback in horror. We're getting the campier side, like the Evil Dead game is coming, and it kind of looks like it's going to go the Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th route. We've seen some horror games come in swinging. We've seen some miss. But what they're doing now, if you can interact with the environment in such an intricate way, in such an impactful way, imagine where horror can go. Were you quick enough with the QTE? Until Dawn did great with QTEs, and that could completely change your outcome of your game. You could save everybody, you could save nobody. It all depends on how quick you can smash that button, which is another conversation because there's an accessibility red flag there. But imagine if you could do the scale of world building and world descaling that Dying Light 2 was projecting to do. Pair that with reactive gaming, with QTEs, quick time events for anybody that doesn't know, choices, dialogue wheels. Like, there's so much that this can impact and affect that could be beautiful, especially for those, if you're like me, who is really interested in the narrative aspect of games. I actually just recently started taking a narrative master course because I've been in this industry for about 18 years on the media side. It is very soul crushing. I think I have cried every day at work for the last 3 years. So that is a pretty good indicator that my time in media is coming to a close. I just can't handle it anymore. The community comments are too much. The pressure at work is too much. It's too competitive for me at this stage in my life. As you can see from my previous video, I have a lot of health issues. And I don't think I'm going to be here for very much longer. So I don't want to spend my last remaining years just constantly just feeling buried by stress and by hate. There's so much hate. It's a lot. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. It all depends on how it is when it launches. Are we going to have another cyberpunk situation, or are we going to have something really magical? And if so, I'm going to be really impressed and really proud of that team, because any development of any kind of game is really hard. It's very difficult. It really depends on the team environment. Game design is so much more collaborative than I think a lot of the general public realize. And if you don't have that collaboration, if you don't have that team vibe, if you don't have that click, then there's going to be a lot of things that don't match up because of that. So that's how I think Dying Light 2 is going to be a complete game changer, literally, for games. I hope I'm right. I hope we're not being misled. I have faith in Techland and what they're doing. They've made a lot of risky moves in terms of leadership. They made a lot of risky moves in terms of design elements and what they want to give as a gaming experience. And I hope they pull it off. I think this would be great. I think that this would be a very big turning point in games. And I'm interested to see what other studios take away from this. Because every time there's a new idea or any kind of innovation in this field, obviously that grows the field as a whole. We all grow together. So I'm interested to see if they pull this off, what's the next studio that's going to take that to the next level? Because there's always a next level. As technology grows and expands and becomes more and more impressive, that potential grows. So I don't know about you guys. Maybe I'm just a dweeb and I'm way too excited and invested in games to make a lot of sense, but I think that is like the dopest shit ever. I cannot wait. I hope we learned something good. If you're interested in watching that video, I'm going to go ahead and link in the comments. A link in the comments our game hub over at Game Informer. We've got interviews, we've got previews, we've got news, we've got the studio culture piece as well, if you're interested in that. We got it all. So I want you to go look at that gameplay if you haven't already, and tell me if I'm wrong. I'm genuinely interested to see what you guys think in terms of how this will impact the industry beyond just being another AAA release. So let me know. If you liked this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That's what the cool kids say. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. I am poor. Yeah, and let me know in the comments. I got a lot of your comments on my last Mass Effect video, wanting clarification about my Dragon Age 2 opinions. I just need to get this E3 stuff behind me. It's very exhausting. Again, not sleeping. I think last week, grand total, I slept maybe 3 hours from Monday to the next Sunday. But once that gets a little bit more regulated, then I'm very interested in doing that video, because I got thoughts. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.